we can put a bow on week 9 of the NFL season with that, and kind of go into our weekly picks of the week. Cass, what you got for us? What's our records looking like?
Ooh, okay, out of the 5. Yeah, out of the 5.
Yeah.
Chris, you went 2-3. Your only 2 being Philly and Cincinnati. Shad and I went 3-2. Because we also picked Pittsburgh on that Thursday night game against Tennessee. So total record so far is me and Chris tied at the top at 27, right? And Shad is behind at 24.
We're gonna slowly make my way.
I don't know about that. It's gonna
We're
be
gonna
tough.
see.
Right,
It's definitely.
see.
Hey, I got about 7 weeks left.
Yeah. I thought Kenny Pickett was gonna sail. He did. He trashed her.
I mean, he did.
Definitely sold to the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
To the fourth quarter.
Basically.
But we can go ahead and start with the first game of the week.
Let's do it.
Ugly game. Carolina. The
One
Bears.
these primetime games, bro. Oh, God.
That's what I be talking about.
I like it.
Thursday is difficult to switch up, though.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, I appreciate it because, you know, I appreciate giving every team an opportunity to, you know, get on prime time for people to see some of these players. I mean, they've got good players. Bears have, you know, Jalen Johnson and
you thought that you were going to have Justin Fields versus, you know, a promising rookie quarterback.
But you say that, but didn't you say earlier that y'all don't have one, right?
Yeah, the Falcons don't have one either. Falcons don't have nothing.
Mean?
No Thursday
primetime game.
No Thursday, no Monday, no Sunday.
No, I'm saying, well, if you could do that to if everybody
don't deserve one,
get one, then okay. But if you're not giving everybody a primetime game, you should be able to.
But maybe Carolina didn't
take some of these motherfuckers out.
I can't remember last year, but maybe they didn't have one last year. I don't know,
but that was also supposed to be the idea of Thursday Night Football. Originally, Thursday Night Football every team was supposed to have a Thursday night game.
Okay.
I don't know where that changed, but that is what they came out saying, that every team will have a Thursday night game. Why are teams not, especially with the extra week? Why are teams not getting a Thursday night game? It doesn't make any sense.
Or a prime time, an extra week with no prime time is kind of nuts, but. With that, you know, we can get into the game briefly. Tyson Bagent playing again. He's been playing well. Had a pretty good game against the New Orleans Saints this past week. Yeah. Bryce Young, that offense is disgusting. Yeah, they both turned the ball over multiple times. He threw 2 pick sixes this past week against Indy, and it might get ugly, but
it's so nasty. That Carolina offense is it's hard to watch. I was even trying to watch y'all game, and it's
definitely, and it got to a point where the Colts were just kind of playing like a very basic defense too, and it's still dominating, and it's not very good. But bad. A part of it is just they just don't have the players. Like every offense is contingent, obviously, on the offensive line play, and you know, Carolina Panthers have one of the worst offensive lines, and then on top of not having very many weapons, so next year is going to be a real year for him. Give him an opportunity to learn, but I'm actually going to go with the Panthers this week. One thing that we didn't mention on top of the quarterbacks, it is Frank Reich versus his former defensive coordinator for Indy, Matt Eberflus. So they both have a little intel on each other in terms of, their players and how they like to go about defense, how he likes to go about offense. But I'm going to go with the Panthers. I think they need a win. They just need to some type of feel good. Brian Burns is not going to play on Thursday, but the Bears another week with Tyson Bagent. He's good, but you know they've clearly got a bunch of backups in that quarterback room. So I'm rolling with the Carolina Panthers.
Chris,
I'm with the Bears. No real reason.
Yeah, no confidence in either of these teams.
No confidence. Montez Sweat gonna show up. He gonna get like 2 sacks.
The new money man.
Yeah,
that's why I'm picking the Bears too. I think their defense kind of like that whole Panthers offense. It's not all Bryce Young's fault. Don't get me wrong, but it looks so bad. I cannot pick them. I don't think I've ever picked them. this season. So I just got to go with the Bears. So,
I got you. Well, I mean, that's enough about that game. We can just
enough about
just scratch that game and go on to the next one. We got Baltimore in another big game, in the division game, Baltimore versus the Browns. We saw the return of Deshaun Watson last week. Kind of still a little bit of an ugly game, but he got the job done. Had an ugly touchdown pass to Amari Cooper. They got tipped up, and it's one thing that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. I don't know if you guys saw the Myles Garrett quote where he said he'd take Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson. So that'll be kind of an interesting subplot to watch as well. Who do you guys got for the game?
I got the Browns.
Ooh.
It's gonna be a slugfest, man. Division game, both day defense. I actually think it's gonna be a very low scoring game. I'm talking like at most 17-14. Could be a 14-10 game. I still ain't seeing enough from Deshaun Watson to make me believe he can make a lot of things happen, but that defense is gonna give him opportunities to put some points on the board. So I'm gonna go with the Browns.
I like that pick. I'm going Baltimore, but only because they're at home. But yeah, I like that pick though. I was close. Man, this game really a toss up. Any AFC North game is a toss up. So it is what it is. But I'm gonna go Baltimore.
I'm also going Baltimore, of course. I've been consistently picking them just about every week, and they're just rolling right now. And as you mentioned, Deshaun Watson is not playing, particularly well, and it's hard. Man. It's hard to talk about because it's like it's like such a weird you're just ass. Like it's not even like
he feels like he's a rookie. He feels like he just got in the NFL. He barely knows the nuances.
No confidence in his game.
It's nowhere near the same quarterback.
It just don't look good.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Like it's very it's just weird, and some of the throws, like we still see some of the. He had a couple throws last game where it's just like he throws it and it's like a complete duck, like 5-yard duck. It's weird. So I'm going with Baltimore. I just think that ultimately they're going to make more plays offensively, and the defense is going to lock up. And we're starting to see a little bit of cracks in that Cleveland defense, especially ever since that Colts game. Really, ever since the Niners game. The Niners, they got after the Niners, and then since then it's kind of been, kind of have your way with them. So, not have your way. Let me not get ahead of myself.
But they're not they're not super.
They're not the historical defense that they were looking like for a little minute. So, I'm rocking with Baltimore. And with the next game, sticking in the division, Cincinnati Bengals versus the Houston Texans. Sneaky good game.
Sneaky good game, yeah.
Sneaky good game. And I mentioned it earlier, with the CJ Stroud kind of tongue-in-cheek comment about being the top quarterback in the AFC South. But the Jaguars have a big game this week, and we'll get into that next. But the Panthers, obviously, I said that the Colts were going to be that team that, the AFC South was going to be a little bit closer, and the Colts were going to have that young rookie quarterback that ends up playing better, with Jacksonville kind of having a tough stretch down the tough season down the stretch. Could that happen with the Houston Texans? And maybe I was just wrong on the quarterback and team. I'm going to rock with the Cincinnati Bengals, though. Unfortunately, the CJ Stroud's still a rookie. He's still a rookie, and he's as great as he was. He still has some issues when he's under pressure, as every quarterback really. But he's still uncomfortable. He even threw a pick. It was on a 2-point conversion, obviously. Got some instant pressure. Immediately tried to chuck it away. And Cincinnati's defense has been playing well. Trey Hendrickson continues to be a good free agency pickup for them. And I just think they continue on with their little streak that they got going on.
Continue with that. I'm gonna go with the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow gonna keep it rolling. He's been just building. He seems like he's really healthy now. So I'm gonna take them. I think it's gonna be a high scoring game though. I think CJ and them still gonna put up some good numbers. But ultimately Bengals gonna come out on top.
Yeah, we got a lot of praise for CJ Stroud. I really like this Houston team. And what CJ's played this season, especially if this keeps up, like he really sped up their timeline Usually you want to give it a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years before you really start talking about like contending, especially in your division. What we're seeing this season, like they are, it sounds like if you spend it to like next year, they go get the right pieces, but it's not this year yet. So I'm gonna go with Cincinnati. I still think, they're on a roll. They're rolling. I like, and I don't see like they got a tough stretch coming up, so they kind of need this win too. They can't really play around with this game. They got to win this one. So I'm gonna go Cincinnati for that reason. I think they know like they cannot play around.
Definitely, and they can't lose any games, especially with Baltimore and the Cleveland Browns playing. If Baltimore wins, that's another division win for them, with them already having a division win over the Cincinnati Bengals. So, definitely a must-win game for them. But as I mentioned, a huge game for both teams. Jacksonville Jaguars versus San Francisco 49ers, both coming off of a bye week. San Francisco's obviously in a different position right now than Jacksonville, coming off of 3 straight losses. Jacksonville's coming off of, a few straight wins. It's a huge game for both of them, especially now that we see, the Houston Texans kind of keeping up in division. Already have a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. So who are you guys picking for the game?
Look,
tough.
This is a tough one. This is a tough one because you would think that San Francisco coming off a bye, they get back on track. They need this win. You don't want to lose 4 in a row if you're really trying to contend, in the NFC or in the league period. Jacksonville's rolling right now. The wins aren't pretty, you know what I mean? Some of them are. Some of them end up being blowouts, but it's not like they're playing particularly awesome. Trevor Lawrence is not having his best season at all. I think that Jacksonville actually pulls this one out, though. As sad as I want to say, I really want San Francisco to win this, but I it's just something about that team where I think they're sputtering right now, and it'll be a good coaching job if Shanahan can kind of turn this ship around for the rest of the season. But I got my doubts about Shanahan too, so I'm gonna go Jacksonville.
What say you, Chris?
Man, I'm gonna regret saying it, but I think the 49ers gonna win. They need it. Like I do get that. The Texans are on Jacksonville ass. Like you can't play around because they coming. But 49ers need this. They need this app. They absolutely have to have this. So I think they're gonna have to come out with a sense of urgency. They gonna make it do what it do. But I'm not really that confident because Brock Purdy been looking like shit. I don't know if he came down to earth. I don't know if it was a little concussion, a little here and there, whatever. I don't know what was going on, but they need this. So I think they're gonna play some little desperate football and get the W.
No surprise here. I'm actually going San Francisco, and I think they get a dominant win over Jacksonville. They've been and this will be the last time that I pick against Jacksonville if they prove me wrong again. So we can write that down. November 8th. This will be the last time I pick against Jacksonville if they prove me wrong again.
It'd be a big win for them to go out and win this one.
But Jacksonville has been flirting with, they are not a good team. They have a great record. They are not a good team. Damn near all the advanced analytics agree with that. Trevor has not had a great season. He's had a bunch of great throws. We see the talent, and they have a fantastic run game. Their defense has been good, but Debo's back. Trent Williams is back. 49ers get right back to what they were doing. Chase Young, obviously, they traded for him. He had the bye week to kind of get some time under the defense, learn, get around his offense or his teammates. And I think he ultimately makes a couple plays this week. And I think that San Francisco wins big 34-17-ish type game, probably close early, and then they start to break away.
Okay, dominant win.
Yeah, but like I said, this will be the last.
He got that jinx shit.
He do got that
Jackson
jinx.
don't jinx. What it called, Jackson?
I do got the jinx. Bruh, I swear. But this will be the last time. We'll just say that. Moving on to the next game. Big game for the Chargers. Detroit Lions versus the Chargers, and honestly, a big game for Detroit too. Obviously they had the big loss to Lamar. They lost to the Seahawks in overtime. Aside from the Chiefs, they haven't had like a
signature win.
Real big win. It feels in some time, and they probably need that. At one point we were looking like, hey, are they going to be the 1 seed? And it's those questions have kind of gone away right now. But who do you guys got for the game?
I'm going to Detroit. I think they have a good bounce back week. I think they needed this break too. Mm-hmm. Kind of, just get themselves back. You know what I mean? I think they're well coached, man. I think they'll get back on track, no problem. Mm-hmm. The Chargers still like I don't know, man. I still a lot of question marks for the Chargers with me. I mean, they had a big win, of course, on Monday night, but I just don't think this team is as good as we thought, they would be. And I think Detroit, goes there and gets a big one on the road.
What say you, Chris? Speak up.
I'm gonna go with the Chargers. They actually need this more than Detroit. Detroit division's ass. They're gonna win that division. There's no way anybody lose that division.
Division is pretty
not
bad.
Saying they're gonna lose this game because they can afford to lose it, but it ain't gonna really be no issue. They lose it. Chargers, they have to have this. They look. I mean, it's still up for the taking for them. They can still get in this thing and make some noise. So, and they were one of my teams that I thought it was going to do something. They pissing me off right now, but
me too. I had them win the division. So
you did have them winning.
So I think they're gonna make some amends. They're gonna build. They're gonna keep building, and I think they're gonna get this W. It's gonna be a close game though. Detroit gonna come to play.
Yeah,
most definitely.
And Detroit's coming off a bye week. So it's a tough game. It's a tough game because, as I mentioned, in the earlier, Detroit hasn't had, especially after the demolition by Baltimore, and then losing to Seattle. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, they had the big win week 1, but looking at the schedule, after this game, it's Chicago, Green Bay, New Orleans, Chicago, Denver, Minnesota, and then you have Dallas, but aside from that, you don't really have any other tests. So
yeah,
it's like if you lose this game, now you're kind of like 1-3 against playoff contenders, and then your next game, the only other real test is against Dallas, and it's like, okay, well, if we lose that one too, now we're 1-4. How do we feel about our prospects for real as being a playoff contender?
Yep.
So it's really tough, and the Chargers need it, man. The Chargers need it, but I am going to go with Detroit simply because they're coming off a bye week. Get Amon-Ra back healthier. He's been nicked up the past couple games. David Montgomery was also a full participant in practice today. Getting him back on top of how Gibbs has been playing recently, I think will be huge, especially for the red zone offense. So I'm going with Detroit, but I would not be surprised if the Chargers win. Obviously, they should be the more desperate team. They need it bad, but I'm going with Detroit ultimately.
Okay.
And for the last game of the week, we're going with New Orleans. They smelling blood in the water right now with the rest of the division. But New Orleans versus Minnesota. Another game that's kind of sneaky good, especially if Josh Dobbs can kind of continue his play, or if they bring in the young rookie back, Jaren Hall. He was looking all right, moving around before he got his concussion against the Falcons. So it's like I said, the New Orleans Saints are kind of smelling the blood in the water. The other two teams that were competing with them are kind of going the opposite directions from them. So this would be a really good time for them to separate. What do you guys think about the game? Who do you guys got?
I think that's the reason why this game is so important for both teams. Like you said, like this is a point, and like we talked about earlier, what time in the season do you kind of pivot to your focus on next season? And I think whoever loses this game should pivot. So that kind of makes it, it got some stakes. It got some stakes to this game for sure. I'm gonna go New
The
Orleans in this one.
Vikings. Oh, I thought you were gonna say Vikings.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to pick them, but I can't. I can't. I still like New Orleans defense, better. Josh Dobbs played very well last week, and he really didn't put out much tape to use against them. But I just think New Orleans has a good defense overall. This is, of course, banking on Derek Carr not selling the game away. But I have, both these teams are kind of at the same level, so it's really a toss up to me. But I'm just going New Orleans.
I'm going New Orleans too. Josh Dobbs, nice story or whatever. I actually think he's gonna do good this week too. But like Cass said, I do like New Orleans defense. They're gonna, as long as Derek Carr don't do no dumb shit, man. Damn. What you say, Shy? When getting that red zone, shit over with.
That shit over with. I'm also going with the New Orleans Saints. As you mentioned, it's a big game for both of them. As we both mentioned, really. One thing that's very interesting is that, hey, if you did say that the division is trash, Chris, but if Detroit loses and Minnesota wins, now we're talking about their game back.
Game back with 2 games against
very
them.
interesting.
That's true.
Season. Oh, question: do we know if Justin Jefferson come back this week, or is it?
They said they activated him still, or designated to return, but yeah, I think I'd see probably next week or the week after.
He should,
or they're maybe looking to see how this game goes to kind of determine.
That's true too. That's a good point. Good point.
So to kind of go along with the point of pivoting, but with that being said, I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints as well. I really think that they feel the urgency. They see that the Falcons are kind of reeling. They see that the Bucs are kind of reeling. And, I think Derek Carr, he obviously came to New Orleans for a reason. He obviously came to New Orleans to kind of make a stand for his career after how it ended with the Raiders. So they need the game. I'm going to go with them in probably a 24-20 game.
Yeah.
And
I can see that.
And I got New Orleans pulling it out. And that wraps it up for our weekly picks this week. Hopefully, a lot of our picks were the same.
We picked a lot of different ones, so hey,
it's a good amount of different ones.
We're gonna hopefully I get my get back this week. But that wraps up our NFL weekly review and weekly picks this week. Looking forward to another great week in the NFL. But now it gets time for us to revisit that question that I've hinted. And then Cash just, spoke a little bit about when it's time to pivot in terms for an NFL team. When is it time for you to pivot? When is it time for you to be like, all right, everybody comes into the season, quote unquote, saying we've got an opportunity to win division. We've got an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. They say that, obviously some teams come in knowing like, hey, probably not going to be a Super Bowl team. Maybe not even be a playoff team. I'm sure the Panthers, didn't expect that. Maybe even the Texans. Actually, I probably think the Texans probably, thought that they might have had a chance as well. But, that is a team that you mentioned, the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about it a little bit. We see the Tennessee Titans have kind of decided that they're going to pivot. They announced Will Levis as the permanent starter moving forward, and Ryan Tannehill being the backup. The Falcons are also a team that are kind of in the position where, hey, should we look to pivot? Should we look to start looking in the future and trying to find out more about these young guys, sitting a Calais Campbell, maybe even releasing a Calais Campbell so that he can, go find work for a playoff team? What are you guys' feelings on that? When do you think in the season, whether it be, or what circumstances do you think need to happen or kind of signs that should lead a team to be like, all right, it's time to start looking towards the future?
I was thinking a lot about this, a good amount about this question. And I think a lot of it goes into longevity of the coaching staff, your quarterback, what picks you got, if you have any picks, if first round picks. If you look at that team like the Patriots, they have questions at both quarterback and head coach possibly they lose this game on Sunday, which we didn't really talk about too much yet. But the report that they might look to move on from Bill a little earlier than expected if they lose this game in Germany on Sunday. So it's like it's a lot of factors that go into it, and I think once you get this far into the season, you kind of see you see exactly what you're missing, and then you pivot to that what the new draft class is looking like, and so I think after and what we're going on week 10, I think this after week 10 is like the prime spot where you know where you are, you know what you got, and you still have enough time to scout the rest of the college football season, and look at what's going on there, and even the other teams.
And it's also starting to get towards the end of the college football season as well. So you might have, enough information where you start to feel comfortable about some of these guys coming out. You also probably have a little bit of better idea of what underclassmen are kind of leaning to coming out and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because I saw a report today. I don't know how true it is, but Shedeur might go back.
And that was something that came from his dad too. So
his dad has been adamant on that. Like
he said that both his sons were going to come out next year.
They were never coming out this year. Well, if it's up to him,
if you get that information, and if that was somebody high on your draft board, you look somewhere else. You pivot again. So I think just after week 10 of the NFL season, after the trade deadline, you figured out what you didn't have, what you couldn't get, or what you could get, and kind of go from there. But it's a lot of teams, honestly, in that boat right now, midway through the season. And it is still a lot of questions, going into this week as to how big it is. Like Chicago still has a lot of questions about what they want to do, especially
I really don't think they have any questions. They should, or at least they shouldn't.
I mean, you're going to have the first two of the top 5 picks in the draft for sure. What do you do?
Maybe not.
Who's gonna be worse?
Oh yeah, man. You never know. Tyson Bagent. if he keeps going,
if he goes out and starts winning.
I'm just trolling. But what about you, Chris? How do you feel about it?
So I think it's more so towards the deadline, like trade deadline for me. But see, the thing is, I think it has a lot to do with coaching because, like Minnesota, for instance, you just got your star receiver is hurt. You don't have a good defense. Your quarterback just got hurt. I get that you just traded for a quarterback, but why not just go ahead and say, okay, whatever. We need to bolster our roster. But what if it's the coach in himself? Like, if I don't do good, they might fire me. So then you got coaches that's like, okay, I'm not about to lose no games. I'm gonna play as hard as I can. Like Brandon Staley, for instance, he can't do that. He can't sit there and say, all right, well, let's pivot and try. No, because this is your last year. I'm not gonna lie to you. If he this is last year. I wholeheartedly believe this is like if they don't make the playoffs, he's gone. And so it's one of them things.
Maybe
it's one of them things where I think it got a lot to do with coaching. Like, where are you at in your coaching tenure versus the actual players you have in your roster?
Because we saw it last week with the Raiders. They pivoted earlier than most probably expected going into the season, but it seems like it was the right move. What I mean? So it's like at a certain point, you got to be realistic.
But I do say the trade deadline because again, you see how Washington, what they do, they sold, they start moving their pieces. They trying to go ahead. We're pivoting. Okay, we know we're not going to be competitive no more this year. We're going to keep trying to develop Sam Howell, but while we doing that, we about to go ahead and get these draft pieces and try to get something and try to make something happen.
Paying big money if you're Washington to go 8-9.
And that's and I'm a little interested by that.
Not to cut you off. That's the other thing. It's like you put yourself in a position where it's like, oh, I could go ahead and lose out and get a higher draft pick, but no, I'm gonna be competitive. Now you're in the middle of the pack. It's one of them things where that's why I said it's more so towards the middle, like trade deadline. Right then and there, you should, at the mid point of the season, you should know like, okay, I'm this far back in the division. Okay, we're being competitive. We're almost here, or nah, we're not really that competitive. These games we won has been on some fluke stuff or whatever the case may be, and now it's like, okay, well, let's pivot. That's why I think it should be around the trade
So
deadline.
and I'm glad that you said mention the trade deadline because while it was just last week, it would be nice to because technically this is the official like halfway point in the season. It would be
Right.
nice if it was pushed back at least one more week or maybe 2 more weeks, so that because obviously as we mentioned at the top of the show, we're starting to see where these teams are starting to separate. And that I think would just one more, obviously it's just one more week, but that additional information would be a little bit more helpful. But I'm glad that you also mentioned the Washington Commanders. I didn't know that you were going to take it there. But one of the things that and it's kind of goes along with the same question that I had about the Falcons is shortly after they made the trades is they came out and said, we think that, or not they specifically came out and said, but reports came out and said, hey, they really think that Sam Howell is the future. Well, if you think Sam Howell is the future, why are you getting rid of 2 edge rushers? Because that's ultimately when you're trying to build a team, they say when you're trying to build a team, you want your quarterback, you want your tackles, you definitely want your edge rushers, corners, and then receivers, and then everybody else from there is just, you can get away with, some, let's just say league average players. So it's like, where, and we all knew the Commanders were there was no question. There's no chance that Ron Rivera was going to stay unless he won a Super Bowl. He was out. No
Right.
question. They were going to make changes no matter what. So with the new ownership and everything. So it's interesting that they kind of made that decision, but we talked about, we named a few teams that are could be in that same boat, but then there's a team like Indianapolis where obviously they're my favorite team, so I have a little bit more skin in the game here, but Indianapolis is a team that's clearly has some players. They clearly are, have some talent and are good enough to, if Anthony Richardson was there, they are probably in the playoff hunt, like a strong playoff team, contending team right now. For a team like that, even Minnesota, obviously they're 5-4 and they've had a miraculous change in their season. They obviously have some good players outside of the quarterback. For a team like that, where they're truly in the middle, where it's like any little decision could change their trajectory next year, or where do you think they should go? Like, should they continue on their path? Obviously, Indy has had a bunch of different quarterbacks and kind of the same core players over the past few years. Same with Minnesota. It's like that's where things kind of get a little interesting. Like, what do you do?
But see,
what's that determining factor? And like you said, it could be quarterback.
But that is the determining factor because you guys have a quarterback on a rookie deal. Minnesota don't. So they in a position where either they're gonna go try to draft one or they're gonna have to get one, and then therefore they're gonna have to pay 10 times the amount of money they're paying for Anthony Richardson. And that go back to the Sam Howell thing is I believe they got rid of them because they really wasn't doing, like we talked about this earlier. Chase Young, out of all the years he's been here, this probably was his best year, but it wasn't like off the charts good. Neither was Montez Sweat. So I'm assuming that they just was like, well, we're not about to pay them. We do have a rookie quarterback, but why not go ahead, ship them out, get draft capital, and save the money to possibly pay somebody bigger. We got a quarterback on a rookie deal, so we can afford it. But let's not put all our eggs in a basket that quite frankly, hasn't worked out for them the past 3-4 years for them.
Yeah.
So I think for Indianapolis, it sucks that Anthony Richardson got hurt, but I think we said enough to believe that he's your future. So therefore, y'all can build around him, even though you can right now is the time where y'all evaluating what you got, and then now
The
we
rest
can
of the players.
right, and so now it's like even if y'all lose, y'all still building the draft capital to get higher up in the draft, and therefore y'all still have the time to be like, okay, we have this, we know what we're lacking. Let's go find this in free agency. We got we can do it because we have a rookie quarterback.
So one more thing before we move on, and I didn't expect it to be this long-winded, but one more thing that makes me think, and it's kind of interesting because of how teams kind of go about it. We can actually using the same Indianapolis the Houston Texans, and I'm not going to use Tennessee because obviously Levis came in as kind of a backup, and these guys were bona fide starters. But the Panthers, the Texans, and the Colts, they kind of were all different in terms of how their teams are built. The Colts had a few probably more established stars in Quentin Nelson and, the previous form of Shaq, DeForest Buckner, stuff like that. And then the Texans probably didn't have necessarily the high end talent. And then the Panthers had like a Brian Burns, and then obviously had a DJ Moore, but got rid of him. How do you guys feel about what route should teams take? One of the things, and before, let me just give a little background to I guess better prep this. So during the offseason, a lot of the conversation, just using the Colts obviously again, was like, hey, should the Colts get rid of a Kenny Moore? Should the Colts get rid of Grover Stewart? They obviously got rid of Stephon Gilmore. Should they start to look at getting rid of Shaq or DeForest Buckner and trying to, make the team younger? From my opinion, I was like, why would Indy do that when, if we want to, in my opinion, I feel like if you want to maximize your team, don't gut your team. If you want to maximize the potential of your quarterback, don't gut your team. If you know that you have great players and especially guys that they can learn from and be an example for them, why would you want to gut them to ultimately get it out the gutter with a bunch of scrubs that aren't going to be here, next year? So, and we see teams do that. We see some teams kind of stick with what they have, and we see other teams that just completely tear everything down and then try to rebuild all at once. So, how do you guys feel about that?
No, I get exactly what you're saying, because a lot of those questions came up with the Broncos this season, right? Like, what do they pivot? Do you trade Pat Surtain?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, why would you trade Pat Surtain to get a draft pick
to possibly be like him?
That would be worse than Pat Surtain. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like to draft a corner that's not going to ever be Pat Surtain. So it's like you have those kind of questions. Why would you trade these proven players for picks and so much unknown just to, back up your timeline a little bit, to kind of match it all up? Now, with Pat Surtain and other cornerbacks like that, and he's still young, so I really don't know why that was even a rumor at the begin with. Like, you do not trade him.
Yeah.
But you do see it with like older, kind of 28, 29, 30-year-old vets.
Kevin Byard.
Like what? Like you would never, you don't, all pro safeties don't fall off of trees. You know what I mean? And it's like, is it worth it? No, I don't think it's worth it to trade those all pro, level players just to get draft capital back. I think you just to match up your overall, where is the coaching staff or the quarterback or whatever it is.
Just to interject here, so what if you gut your team and you do bottom out, but you say, Bryce, let's just use Bryce Young for an example. They bottomed out, obviously they're not going to have a great season. Let's just say they didn't trade. They were just a bad team last year, or like Jacksonville. We can use Jacksonville because they had back-to-back number one overall picks with Trayvon Walker and Trevor Lawrence. Do you think that the benefit of having possibly a top 5 draft pick is
consecutive years?
Or just bringing a young quote unquote stud is more beneficial than having maybe stud veterans?
I mean, for me, I resonate to what you're saying. Literally, like for us as the Eagles, like we're keeping our veterans. Like we would probably have one of the older rosters, but at the same time, we got the young people coming in, but we got the veterans there to teach them. Like Jordan Davis barely played last year; he's a starter now. Mm-hmm. Any other team he would went to, he probably would have been a starter, but he came to us. He wasn't a starter. Now he's a starter. Jalen Carter's not even a starter for us. Because we still got Fletcher Cox. Like you said, Nolan Smith, not a starter. He probably won't be next year, but he's gonna be in the rotation. It's like those kind. You need somebody there to bridge the gap. Like not everybody can come in and just dominate. Ain't nobody. Everybody can't come like a Nick Bosa. Everybody can't come in and dominate like that because Chase Young came in. I mean, now he's gone. It's like
Micah Parsons. Nobody expected, and they all
right,
expected Micah Parsons to be great, but
but
nobody expected this.
But that don't always
After
happen.
year
Especially,
three.
especially not as an edge rusher. I mean, he wouldn't win a 11. He definitely wouldn't have went that. That is, if we know knowing what we know now, he wouldn't have went that low.
Right.
And I think you see it with the Eagles or even the Cowboys. There's a way to do both. You don't have to bottom out. And I think that's the main thing. You got to have a good scouting department. You know what I mean? You got to have a good staff behind you. But there is a way to do both.
Culture too. You got to have
A good culture, like all of that. And I think that's really the best, like how I think is the best way to do it. Like the Eagles, like the Cowboys, or just find a way, make the right trades. You know, you end up draft right. You can get somebody late in the first round that ends up being a better pick than the number 5 overall pick. You know what I mean? It's ways. It's not as often, of course, but there are ways.
And the Eagles were kind of my I guess example, or that when I was, when, as I mentioned with the Colts in the offseason and those questions and stuff like that, the Eagles were the team that I was like, look at this. We saw, Jalen Hurts now is not what people thought he was going to be coming in
at all.
Like nobody thought, you were one of them. We all had questions, how good of a passer he was going to be, especially coming out of college where he wasn't even an elite passer in college. Obviously, he got benched for Tua because he was struggling to pass the ball against Georgia, so, nobody thought that. But the thing is that the Eagles elevated his floor, in my opinion, by having those veterans, and obviously you had to strike gold in having a good vets like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and Lane Johnson and Kelsey, who are pros that have also, who are not only guys that were at the top, all pros at the top of the league. Even some of them are still now, maybe the 2 offensive linemen, maybe not the D linemen, but that are also good vets that are going to, show you the ropes, teach you the right way. So you have to have that, like you have to strike gold with that as well. But it just doesn't make sense to me personally. Why would I want my guy, like my quarterback, to learn losing? Like I don't want you to like come in, and even the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's a crazy way to think about it, but that's facts. Learn losing.
Even but if you think about it, even the Kansas City Chiefs, like the Chiefs were a ready-made playoff team when Patrick came to take over.
That's true.
Is Patrick Mahomes if he starts with, the Browns, like Baker did? Is he the same quarterback? Is he looked at, as a GOAT trajectory? Personally, I don't believe so, because you had all these guys that were already there. They were already playoff proven. They understood how the grind of the NFL. And now we just need you to come in. We don't need you to be a leader right away. We don't need you to do this right away. We don't need you to try to, shift the whole culture, because we have these vets for you to help elevate that floor.
Agreed.
So, and I would even say, I'd probably have to do a little bit more research on it, but I'd say that a lot of our top quarterbacks have had some of those higher floors. The Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, they were a playoff team before they drafted Josh Allen. Had a lot of good vets there. The Bengals are probably the outlier, but Lamar Jackson had a great team with the Baltimore Ravens. Sure. Justin Herbert. They had a lot of good talent, and then obviously Phillip was just getting older, but they had Keenan Allen, they had Mike Williams, they had Joey Bosa, they had Derwin James. So, a lot of those teams were just saying, Brock Purdy, elevate the floor. So I don't know if you want to put him in those conversations, but, elevate the floor. So shit, Dak Prescott. Prescott came into a team, the year before Tony Romo got hurt, and they were bad, but it just feels like you elevate your floor, and I think that would maximize your quarterback play.